Now, when I smell something fishy,
你最讨厌哪个国家？
日本，骨头里就是讨厌它。
I'm usually right.
我就比较讨厌日本。
If it's in regards to China or how the Chinese government operates, and let me tell you,
根本没有意识到这个问题的严重性。
I smelled something real fishy.
我不喜欢日本人。
You know what it is? China is now claiming that it has stopped xenophobia, nationalism, and hateful content about Japan.
美国、日本、韩国，你们最讨厌哪个？肯定日本啊。
So because it smells fishy to me, I'm gonna go hop over the Great Firewall of China back into China to go onto the Chinese internet right here, right now, and I'm gonna see if that's true. But first, you have to understand why they're claiming to have cracked down on this. You see, China and Japan have a very nasty history. Japan invaded China, they decimated the population, it was absolutely horrible. But Japan moved on, the rest of the world moved on. For God's sakes, America dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan and now they're allies, right? But China uses this hatred of Japan as a vehicle for population control. If there's a boogeyman that everyone can hate together, then they can control the Chinese populace. Anyway, China is claiming to have cracked down on hateful content about Japanese people because just the other day, a Japanese mother and child were stabbed in China. And the attacker apparently wanted to stab the entire bus of Japanese children that were in China. When a brave Chinese woman named Hu Yaoping stood between the attacker and the children and sadly died while defending the children. Now, many netizens in China came out to show their support of the victims and the hero, the Chinese woman who sacrificed her own life to defend these Japanese people. But anyway, there was a whole group of people that came out calling the Chinese woman that defended the Japanese people a Japanese spy, a sympathizer, and some of the most vile hatred I've ever seen in my life came out on the Chinese internet after this happened. Anyway, Western outlets jumped on this news, covering this idea that Chinese social media companies just simply had enough. They've had enough of this xenophobia, this anti-Japanese sentiment, and they removed over 800 pieces of content and comments promoting hatred against Japanese people. I quote, "We will not accept this hype of xenophobia and this hate speech by individuals," said the government-controlled People's Daily of China. "This is unacceptable to mainstream Chinese society and us Chinese." Now, Douyin and Weibo, China's versions of TikTok and Twitter, publicly slammed these accounts. They said they promote extreme xenophobia and cheered for criminal behavior in the name of patriotism. Well, anyway, let's go to the Chinese internet right here, right now, and see this so-called crackdown. Let's see if Douyin, China's TikTok, removed all this hateful stuff against Japanese people. Because these news articles seem to insinuate that they're finally doing something about this, which is crazy to me because China's promoted horrible xenophobia, nationalism, and violence against Japan ever since I was there, way before I was in China, and then still way after. Now, I've time-stamped this to show that these videos are still here after this whole crackdown. So here we are on the Chinese internet. Let's have a look at some videos that I just found after the crackdown.
你最讨厌哪个国家？
日本，骨头里就是讨厌它。
Yeah. Why are they even putting those flags there for people to step on? Is that an Israeli flag and also a Japanese flag? Why are you teaching children this? You know what the best part of this video is? Well, I should say the worst part of this video is. Listen to the response of the parents in the background.
你是日本人。
我就比较讨厌日本。
炸死小日子，炸死小鬼蛋！
以后要干嘛？当兵干嘛？
当成日本。
我不喜欢日本人。
想到日本人了是吧？为什么想到日本人不能这样？啊？你为什么想到日本人不能这样？
This is what they teach in China. In the education system, they show them gruesome imagery, videos, all kinds of horrible things that illustrate the past of Japan's horrible treatment of China. And they show these to children. They take them to museums where they're looking at like corpses and mutilated bodies and all this horrible, horrible war atrocity stuff. And they do this to implant hatred at a very young age.
你说点中国话。哎，哦，我的从日本过来的干活。1、2、3，下来，下来。
Now, this is a joke video, right? And as much of this is a joke, I want to show you really what happens in real life. This is real footage.
分车不拉日本人。
你是哪里人啊？我是日本的。日本人啊？对。日本人那就没办法拉了，日本人。来，下去吧。日本人没办法拉，日本人没办法拉。哎，为什么？
So I covered that on my other show, but yeah, they do refuse service. I've actually been kicked out of taxis before for being American in China, so this is par for the course. That being said, Japanese people have it much worse. Again, another example of videos that are currently proliferating across Douyin, the company that came out and said, we've had enough of this xenophobia.
那肯定是日本啊！妈的，打日本人进祖宗谱啊！
Destroyed Japan's entire ancestral tree. Western media is like, yes, look at China's finally doing something about it. Are they? Are they? Because this is me on the Chinese internet right now. Slap that soldier. Yeah, it actually reminds me, I had to go on this, help out in the summer camp in Shenzhen in China. And the students were lining up to do this activity. They had American soldiers and Japanese soldiers like this, like very racist portrayals of them. And you could bayonet them. You could pay like a little money and you could stab the soldiers. And I was like looking over there. I was like, that soldier looks an awful lot like me. It's like some exacerbated big nose and stuff. It's this kind of stuff they teach kids.
他国的野心吗？那肯定有啊，狗要不要吃屎啊？
美国、日本、韩国，你们最讨厌哪个？
肯定日本啊。
有同学提到了大日本帝国，提的时候还在嘻嘻哈哈。
Yikes. So this is actually a great example. This teacher is going on about there's some students were mentioning the empire of Japan. The kids are laughing, and I'll tell you why. Even though the seed of hatred has been planted in them, the average Chinese person is a reasonable person, right? The average Chinese person is a level-headed person, even though they've gone through this brainwashing, horrible, xenophobic, awful education system. People still know that they like Japanese stuff. They probably know that Japanese people these days are not part of this empire that's going to take over China. They've gotten over this, but the teachers and the parents and these people in government, their job is to make sure that that's not acceptable, that the hatred is continued. And so the kids are laughing about this because it's ridiculous. Like, why are you even bringing this stuff up? And the teacher's like, are you still laughing? By the way, what she says, shishi ha, ni hai shishi ha ha. If you ever hear somebody in China refer to laughter as shishi ha ha, which is like an onomatopoeia of how laughter sounds, that you got to stay away from that person because that means they have absolutely no sense of humor.
根本没有意识到这个问题的严重性。
This is just like a smattering of tens of thousands of videos that are still on the Chinese internet. So I guess they haven't been removed. I mean, the news articles were right. They did remove some of the comments and some of the accounts, but like 0.000000001% of them. Yay! Let's celebrate. Dude, I removed 800 anti-American hateful comments from Chinese accounts on my last few videos. Where's my foreign ministry press statement? Where's my big article from mainstream media? Where are you guys? Are you going to go shout me out because I removed hateful xenophobic comments? There's like tens of thousands of these anti-Japan hate videos online on the Chinese internet right now. They didn't go anywhere. So I want to ask, what crackdown? Where is this crackdown where we're celebrating China changing its ways? And yet, after this response, we still see that Japan continues to distance itself from China. It's almost like something is going on behind the scenes. You see, Japan has seen China's aggression and has now signed a defense pact which allows Japanese forces to train in the Philippines. And let's just say China isn't happy about this. Getting news about China is not only challenging, but outlets avoid certain topics. So ground news has been invaluable to me as a China content creator. Also, you guys keep asking me where I get my sources, and I have to say, there is no substitute for ground news. It's what I use. Media comes out too fast to verify, and it can be hard to know which sources to trust. Ground news takes that guesswork out of all of this, and I'm so excited to have them as a sponsor of this video. Take, for example, this recent news on the South China Sea. Ground News aggregated 28 articles on it. And according to these visual breakdowns, you can see coverage is coming across the political spectrum from 39% of sources rated as having high factuality, meaning that their reporting tends to be less subjective. You can see who owns the news outlet and where the bias lies. Looking closer at the headlines is interesting. Sources from all over the world are covering it, including out of the USA, Saudi Arabia, and even Russia. If we take a look at the different headlines coming from this story, we can see, for example, the left says, China, monster ship drops anchor in the West Philippine Sea, while the right said, the Philippines is concerned about the arrival of a monster ship from China. One thing I love is that you can see which side, the right or the left, is avoiding or covering which topic, which helps you avoid that political feedback loop bias. In this hyper-polarized world, this hyper-partisan world, one where I work super hard to maintain my neutrality, this is an absolute game changer. Not only am I proud to work with Ground News, but I'm also excited to share this with you, my audience. I want you to be armed with impartiality, truth, and accuracy when navigating this messy world of media. Check them out at ground.news/Lawai86 and use my link to save 40% on the same Vantage plan I use for unlimited access to all their features. Why would they crack down anyway? You have to understand, if you're going to congratulate China for doing something, you have to understand why they did it in the first place. As a guy that lived in China for 10 years, let me tell you, China has literally spent 70 years making their entire government identity hating Japan. Yes, Japan has committed some of the worst atrocities known to mankind in China, but this is not the same government. It's not the same people, nor is it even a threat for China's future sovereignty. Japan doesn't teach mass hatred of China to its kids. China does this because, like I said, it's a form of population control. In an authoritarian government, dictatorship, it needs a boogeyman that everyone is supposed to hate. If everyone has a common enemy, it's easier to exert control. Remember, China is just a wealthier version of North Korea. It's not a free country. Its entire existence relies on the populace hating another country. Recently, that country is actually the USA, but traditionally it's been Japan. Japan absolutely did devastate and destroy China less than 100 years ago, but while the rest of the world moved on, China has not. Remember, there's no freedom of speech, no freedom of expression or protest or anything in China. So when you allow the people to hate Japan or the USA, it keeps the wound alive in society. So the government can turn on the tap to release societal pressure when they have something they need to cover up. It's a tried and true method of dictatorships. You look at all of history. The problem is, China's got this massive problem right now. They want everyone to come to China. Their tourism industry has been devastated after what people saw, that what they did to their citizens during the pandemic, locking them up, including foreigners in China, like people that were visiting, they locked them up for an insane amount of time, hundreds of days at a time, some of these people. And the chaos and the cover-up that ensued, most people are not interested in visiting a country like that. Their tourism industry is dying, and they need people to come. So they're relaxing visa regulations, and they're begging people to travel to China. There's hundreds of YouTubers right now posting the same video title about how Western media was wrong and how China shocked them and how safe China is. Why do you think this is happening? Well, China's pumping billions of dollars into their tourism and propaganda, and this all hinges on you thinking it's a safe and free country, which it's not. So I want to ask, why do people believe that the Chinese government is going to crack down on xenophobia and hatred when they release press statements like this? Or why are you believing in it? I apologize, Chinese government, but I'm going to have to politely disagree. You did this. Not only do you accept hatred against foreigners, especially against Japanese and Americans, you actively teach it and promote it in society and your education system. It is part and parcel how you work. You host hateful war fantasy dramas about Japan every single day. You take children to museums to look at brutalized corpses from Japan's invasion of China. You literally made this happen. And then you expect people to believe you that you stopped it all of the sudden.
我不喜欢日本人。
Not only that, the internet is still completely full of anti-Japan skits and commentary and tirades and interviews.
你最讨厌哪个国家？
日本，骨头里就是讨厌他。
And children being rewarded for hating Japanese people.
要是日本人的话，我干死你！
Despite this supposed crackdown, China, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Or, I guess better said, you can't have your hate and hide it too. I really can't stand this trickery. If you're gonna crack down on xenophobia, racism, and hatred, which you should, by the way, then do it. Don't just say you did it and keep teaching pure hatred to your populace as if nothing has changed. For you, the viewer, let this be the analogy for when you think back on or when you hear anything from the Chinese government. If there's something that they want you to believe, then it's probably not true. If you like this video, go check out my other show, which I do with Serpent ZA. It is called The China Show. It is up-to-date news about everything that's happening in China, the good, the bad, the viral, the funny, everything in between. It's the only place you need to be if you want to catch up on what's happening in China. I really appreciate you guys so much for getting me over 1 million subscribers. You guys are absolute legends. Thank you very much, and thank you for your support, and I'll catch you on the next one.